No mincing words Monday for the judge as she explained what led to her decision to hand down an 18-month maximum sentence for involuntary manslaughter to Rust armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed.
So what does it mean for actor Alec Baldwin, who will stand trial for the same charge in just a few months?
My guess is that the 18 months is going to be all that anyone's going to get for this, because he's Alec Baldwin. How dare you?
Yeah, he's a famous...
How dare you do this to... How terrible for him that this happened.
Right.
How terrible that you handed him a gun that shot somebody. Why would you do that to him?
Yeah.
What kind of a monster would do that to a national treasure like Alec Baldwin?
Hannah Gutierrez-Reed from the set of Rust. She was the armorer, sentenced to 18 months in jail for involuntary manslaughter. Alec Baldwin goes on trial next. Ed, we've been following this from a gun safety perspective, and personally, I don't believe that 18 months in jail is enough for having a hand in action which caused the death of another human being. But that's what we got. Have you been keeping an eye on this case as well a little bit?
I've been keeping an eye on it since the day the story broke. However, it was almost 2 years ago, or more than 2 years, simply because, like you, I do photo shoots. Mm-hmm. I write up shot lists, and I stand there as the armorer on photo shoots and video shoots, and it was one of those, I mean, as far as people who deal with guns and cameras, this was one of those Challenger explosion moments that reminded everybody, like, oh, wait, space travel is really difficult and really dangerous.
Yeah.
And this was one of those, oh, wait, you can get enough oh-ands to stack up to where all of a sudden everything lines up just wrong and somebody's shot, somebody's dead.
Yeah.
So the first night I remember, I actually talked to my father the night that this happened, just because he was curious about how this could have happened, and he had theories on how it happened. And it appears that our theories were correct, and that, yeah, there was live ammo on set because people had been shooting. You're out in the desert. If you live in the big city, it can be tempting to want to go shooting when and where you can. And yeah, it was a bone-chilling story from the start for me, just because it's one of those, not that nobody thinks it could happen to them, and the way that we handle guns here is so much more safe than apparently the way that she was handling guns out there. But it's a terrible reminder that unless you're using rubber guns,
yeah,
or firearms that have been fixed so they cannot discharge, just keep in mind
something could happen. And again, if you are negligent, I was about to say if you are not careful, but you need to. When I looked at this, there's active negligence going on throughout this entire situation. I watched an analysis video the other day, somebody who had access to some of the daily footage that had previously been shot on the set of Rust. And this person also knew that Alec Baldwin had refused to take the firearms training that was offered to him on the set, apparently. And again, I'm just repeating what other news sources have put out there. And his trigger finger discipline was terrible. And on that single action army, if his finger was on the trigger, and as he described in his interview, which I thought was the stupidest thing he could have ever done.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Pull the hammer back and cheated a little, and cheat the hammer, and then the gun just went off. And even in the news reports, it's just making me angry, because I read somewhere that Alec Baldwin was holding a pistol which then discharged. No, guns don't just discharge. They are made to fire. Guns don't just go off. They are made to fire. And somewhere along the line, everybody messed up. I am a firm believer that if you are in or near guns, and Alec Baldwin makes millions of dollars using guns in his movies, he should know that when someone hands you a gun, you double check and make sure that is this gun loaded? Yes, I know you told me it is. We've done that here in photo shoots.
We do that here every time.
Is that gun loaded? Yeah, it's unloaded.
Right.
There's no ammo on the set when we're doing a photo shoot. I'll just check anyway. Nobody takes that personally. I mean,
right.
This thing was a soup sandwich from the very beginning.
Well, and a lot of things. When this happened, I realized I didn't really have any idea what Hollywood gun handling protocols were. And I remembered that back in the 80s, one guy grabbed a gun that had, he put a blank in the cylinder and spun it, played Russian roulette, and killed himself.
Yep.
Because he didn't understand that a blank, there was going to be a bunch of gas that came out. And I remember when I was a kid, when Brandon Lee was tragically killed on set with what turned out to be a squib situation. There was a bullet stuck in the barrel from earlier or something. But if you hop online, you can see the gun safety rules that are to be posted on every movie set. And you or I would read through them and say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One, you never actually point guns at people.
Right.
I know that in the movie it looks like they're pointing guns at each other, just like it looks like the magician cut that lady in half. They're not really pointing guns at each other.
Fix that with the camera angle.
Right, exactly. So it sounds like everything that went wrong could have, short of 3 people getting shot. And
yeah, and we will often get notes to the magazine. You know, hey, I saw that picture and it looks like you're pointing the gun right at the camera. Well, you know, we're really good at doing this, and we're not often pointing the gun right at the camera. And if it ever does happen to happen, I will say it unequivocally right here, right now, so everybody knows. At Concealed Carry Magazine, when we have guns on set, there is no live ammo anywhere on set. There is a subject matter expert and a safety officer, both doing the same job, the subject matter expert, so that we are doing everything appropriately according to training protocols, and the safety expert who has the authority to stop everything we're doing and say, wait a minute, I want to double check or triple check or quadruple check that this is all set and safe. And it's one of the things I've been here almost 12 years now, and I made it really, really clear. Nobody is ever going to get shot at a photo shoot or video shoot or any other USCCA Concealed Carry Magazine Delta Defense event. That's not happening. That's how a gun organization gets a bad name. And I simply won't let that happen. But now I'm waiting to see what happens with Alec Baldwin. His trial is coming up next. Does he just try to defer the blame over to the this armorer and said, well, she handed me the gun, it should have been okay. It's not my fault.
my guess is that the 18 months is going to be all that anyone's going to get for this, because he's Alec Baldwin. How dare you?
Yeah, he's a famous...
How dare you do this to... How terrible for him that this happened.
Right.
How terrible that you handed him a gun that shot somebody, and the round went through her and killed her and went into another guy. Why would you do that to him?
Yeah.
What kind of a monster would do that to a national treasure like Alec Baldwin?
Yeah, I understand. I'm going to have to say the words. Ed is being facetious now, folks.
Oh, you got me. Yeah, that was a joke. That's right. I sometimes forget literally a third of humans don't have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
That's why laugh tracks had to be invented, folks. They were no longer in the vaudeville house hearing when everybody else was laughing, and they had to be told when to laugh when listening to a radio show.
Nice. See, this and a history lesson. I'm thinking that I would really want to be on the Alec Baldwin jury, but based on my previous videos, I don't think that if I was local to that case, I would get the opportunity. What would you like to hear about that if you were behind the scenes?
The jury, from jury selection?
Yeah.
I was about to say, because if you were in jury selection, that's how your picture ends up in a law school book on the cover page of the title page for jury selection. What I would like to hear is the questions that are being asked to potential jurors with regard to, I suppose the questions would center around, there's going to be the obvious, do you believe that you can make an objective decision, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd be interested in how many times have you seen Glengarry Glen Ross? Or if it's going to be ridiculous stuff like that, or if it's going to be ridiculous stuff like, what are your feelings on guns? Mm-hmm. This might be a first for some of the people involved, in that they're going to be working their hardest to defend a famous person who doesn't like guns, who is accused of using a gun to kill somebody. So I guess this is going to be a big weekend for everybody.
Yeah, I would really love to hear, and I know it will never happen, but I would love to hear the discussion to take the shape of personal responsibility. You know, it's the person who has the gun in his or her hand who is responsible. And in this case, there was a chain of malfeasance that ended up with someone's death, and every single person along the way was responsible for that. And maybe Alec Baldwin has even more culpability because he was also the producer. He was hiring people and having them do the work on the set. And and it was done so poorly that someone died.
And this is part of why I think what Miss Gutierrez-Reed has been sentenced to is going to be the end of it. If they force Alec Baldwin to take personal responsibility for what he did while holding that gun, that shows that it isn't the gun's fault.
Yeah, you're right.
And the backbone of their anti-gun religion is guns are bad, guns are causing all these problems. We counter with, no, I live in a house that's basically made of guns. Nobody's ever been shot in there. Yeah. It's the people who are using and holding the guns that are the problem. Mm-hmm. For them to hold him responsible is for them to tell me I'm right. So they can't hold him responsible.
Right. It has to be blamed on the gun because guns are bad.
And this person, it's unfortunate she's a woman, but she's a person in the gun business. So clearly it is her fault, not National Treasure Alec Baldwin's.
Well, I don't know. You say person in the gun business, and this brings me back around to the question of...
That's a different discussion.
Yeah. Back around to the reasoning behind the sentence, perhaps. And as I said in the beginning, I'm 100% opposed to this sentence. It should have been more stern. It was the maximum. It was the most they could give her, the 18 months. But did she not know that the police and jail officials were listening in to her comments as she was disparaging the jury and saying that this whole thing was interrupting her modeling career, and all of this was recorded? And then she walks into the courtroom and says, well, I can't go to prison because I got to take care of my ailing father who has cancer. And the prosecutors say, well, you can't go to prison because it will mess up your modeling career, and the jury are a bunch of expletive idiots who don't even know what's going on. Well, they do know what's going on, that you were responsible for safety and you allowed someone else to get killed.
There's a reason I only give somebody so hard a time if they're carrying concealed with no round in the chamber. And it's usually because they are so concerned about negligently discharging that gun that they don't want to deal with it. And I'm only going to give them so much trouble over that, just because I would far rather have them be cautious like that than be cavalier like she apparently was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because anybody who says they cannot imagine what it would be like to be in her position right now either has never been in charge of firearms or is lying. You just don't want to.
Right.
It's like the people who get caught at TSA with their EDC because they weren't paying attention. They were really careful with guns, except for that one time they weren't.
Yeah. And they forgot that the gun was wherever it was.
Right. Yeah. I normally don't carry in that backpack, but the gun was in there and I was in a hurry. Yeah, we know. You messed up. Yeah. And I don't know her. I've never worked with her. I've never met her. For all I know, to give her the benefit of the doubt, for all I know, this is one of those situations where she was always a really good armorer, except that one time that she wasn't.
Yeah.
And we went shooting on this day, and then the next morning we had to shoot this scene, and then there's a bang, and none of us know what happened. And then, of course, it becomes terribly obvious what happened. There was a live round in that gun, and now there's 2 people shot, 1 killed.
Yeah, and it's again, I'm getting back to the going to be very interesting to see the Alec Baldwin portion of this, what comes next, because in my world, people are responsible. They should be held accountable, and they should have consequences for their actions. So.
Alec Baldwin is the greatest thing since shoes, and they will not put my baby in prison, Kevin.
I know you're a big fan.
Alec Baldwin is not going to prison. He can't go to prison.
Well,
not in today's world.
I can wish, and I can hope, and I can be happy if he does.
We can all hope.
But it certainly won't bring Helena Hutchins back. Certainly won't solve any of the grief that her family is dealing with, anything like that. But maybe it will remind people that a gun in your hand is your responsibility. The gun doesn't do anything. You make the gun function.
You think you'd be a hairnet guy in prison?
Ooh.
Like one of those guys that you see with like really perfectly pressed scrubs and a hairnet?
I don't know. I don't know if I could grow this out long enough.
He's got hair for days.
Yeah.
Let's not compare your and my hair to Alec Baldwin's lustrous mane.
Yeah, but no, most definitely. And this might also be an opportunity for us to say that we are available for safety officer work in Hollywood.
We are.
I'm
We're
an
available for.
amazing safety officer.
We have a tremendous safety record. We are available for Hollywood work, but not in California and not in Canada, which unfortunately bumps off most westerns. So.
Right.
But if we're doing like a way of the gun kind of thing,
or
give me a call.
What's the zombie one? Why can't I think of it
Zombieland?
now? Zombieland
Dawn of the
was
Dead?
good. The Walking Dead. There we
Walking
go.
Dead.
Yeah,
Okay.
down. I'll go to Georgia and
Sure.
and do safety officer work. I'm happy with stuff like that.
We could do stuff like that. Hang out at Taurus. Head
All
down
right.
to Bainbridge.
Yeah, there we go. Well, thanks for talking to me about this, Ed. And
Definitely.
we've got more topics. We'll continue sitting down in front of these cameras.
Yes, indeed.
Now, before you go, if you think you're using the right caliber for self-defense, think again. And you might not even know it, but your ammo could be putting you at severe disadvantage when you pull the trigger. Click the link in the description below to watch this short, unbiased video comparing the top 4 self-defense calibers and see if you end up changing handguns.